I spent 2 years in this seat before. Yeah, I don't need it again.
All right. Hit a couple buttons here. And we are all set.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 16, 2021 Urbandale City Council Lunch and Learn meeting. And I'll ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Caduce,
Here.
Obrecht,
Here.
Hoagie,
Here.
Russell,
Here.
and Carberry Montgomery is absent today.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is to approve the agenda. I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved. This is Pogge.
Second, Obrecht.
Motion by Pogge, second by Obrecht. Discussion, roll call, please.
Hoagie,
Yes.
Obrecht,
Yes.
Caduce,
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, first of all, is item 3.1 is to discuss the proposed beekeeping ordinance. And AJ, are you going to start us off, or Steve, or who's going to start us off?
There we go. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you. Today we have updates on a couple of things, and we're going to start off with the beekeeping ordinance. If you'll recall, it almost got lost in the whole COVID blur, but several months ago there was discussion at the council level concerning the possibility of introducing a bee ordinance that would allow for, under certain conditions, individuals to raise bees within the corporate limit. Again, kind of waned a bit with other things taking priority, but in talking with Steve, he was prepared to bring forward the bulk of that information at this point in time, and he'll explain to you what is still missing. But essentially, we're getting prepared to bring a ordinance forward for your consideration. So in advance of that, I wanted to have Steve provide you an overview of what he's crafted for your consideration and answer questions that you may have. And then also that, again, he'll explain what information is missing, and then we'll go from there. So with that, Steve, why don't you take over?
Thank you, AJ. So yeah, this is, there was a desire at that time to really craft this after what West Des Moines has implemented. They frankly are the only metro city that really has anything on the books that addresses bees. Most of the other metro cities are like we are today, where they really don't address it. So this is very much after what West Des Moines did. I talked to their staff very briefly just to kind of understand what they did, and it made a lot of sense. So the main thing I'm looking for today is direction from you all if this is the right path that we're going down. And as AJ says, if you're comfortable with where we are today, the next step would be to go ahead and schedule a public hearing to amend the zoning code before P&Z, and then of course it would come to you for that public hearing. So Des Moines established this in, I actually have it, what was it, March, it was right about 5 years ago, March 7th of 2016 is when West Des Moines approved theirs. And so it's been about 5 years. And the good news to start with overall is they really have only ever had one complaint since they approved it. And they were able to determine in that particular instance, it was a water source problem. One of the things that you'll see in the performance standards is that you do need to have a source of water close to the hive because bees do need the water. So they were able to identify that that was the issue and get it corrected. So in 5 years, they really have only ever had that one issue that's been problematic. So I think that speaks good. What they did and what I'm proposing to you for ours is very simple. They identified beekeeping as something that is allowed in residential areas. And then in another chapter of their code that talks about performance standards, they've got all of those performance standards listed in terms of what you need to do to be able to keep the bees. And so if you had a chance to look at what Nicole sent out yesterday, what we would do is just simply change our urban livestock section. We would just amend that to include apiaries, which is the scientific term for beekeeping. And then we would just add a paragraph C and all of the performance standards that are under paragraph C. Probably the one that carries the most weight in all those performance standards is item G, where we really get into if hives are going to be located within certain distance from a property line. There are flyway barriers that need to be installed, and that just means when bees take off, they fly at a certain height and kind of in a straight line. And so what you want to do is establish a situation to where if the bees are going to be within a certain distance to a property line, that you're putting up a fence or a building or a row of shrubs that's got at least a 6-foot height to it to get those bees so that they're flying up and above neighbors, essentially. And then, of course, we put in there that a building permit would need to be obtained prior to constructing any kind of a building or a fence. Short of that, I'm proposing that we not do any kind of licensure or permit fee. Des Moines is not doing that. They're kind of trusting that people will inform themselves and know how to do this. My gut is, in looking at this, that there's probably not a whole lot of people that are going to do this because it is a fairly, you have to take care of the bees every day. So there's a lot of work that's involved. There's money involved and all of the stuff that you need to be able to do it correctly. So I don't think we'll have a lot of people that will do this, but, you know, we can talk about if you have other thoughts. I think the last thing I wanted to mention, just in terms of starting the conversation, we had some conversation just about liability and insurance avenues from the city's standpoint. John Conyer did do some checking on that, talked to Holmes Murphy, and he confirmed that the city's coverages with ICAP will provide coverage in case the city would get named in any kind of a suit for allowing beekeeping. City public officials' liabilities, the $2 million, and then the excess liability coverage of $10 million. So in talking to them, felt like we had coverage from the city's standpoint. In terms of the beekeeper, generally their homeowner's policy is going to take care of having the bees as long as they do it as a hobby. And so where it could get problematic is if they turn it into a little side business and they're selling honey or doing things like that. But again, in West Des Moines, that has not been an issue. So I did not address that at this time and what I'm proposing. And then I have reached out to the Iowa State apiarist. I have not heard back from him yet, maybe on spring break, you know, who knows. But my intent will be to talk to him before we take this to P&Z. West Des Moines did have a paragraph in their ordinance that says that you need to incorporate best management practices along with the recommendation of the Iowa State apiarist, so I put that in there. And then I added a paragraph I, which is not in West Des Moines code, that says that the beekeeper must register the location of their apiaries annually with the state apiarist using BeeCheck, which is an online registry. It's maintained through FieldWatch, which is a third-party partner with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. So, and really, the primary reason that they established that registry is it allows them to know where the bees are and gives them some control if there's going to be entities that are going to be spraying pesticides. You don't want that to happen and be close to where the bees are. So that gives them a way to be able to regulate that. And so they do require, the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship requires that apiaries annually register. And so we put that in there. And again, I'm proposing we just kind of do that as a trust thing, inform people that's what they need to do. Certainly if we would get a complaint, that's one of the things that we would check out is have they done that and kind of go from there. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, just in terms of how I would propose that we do this and the format of how to get it done. And again, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I'm generally wanting to know, is this the route that you're comfortable with? And again, if you are, we'll take it to P&Z with a public hearing and then bring it back to you.
All right, thanks, Steve. Good summary. I think it's, I personally think it's a good, concise ordinance. And so we'll turn it over for discussion with the council. Any thoughts from anybody?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Steve. The first one being, last time we considered this, we had several residents who came protesting it on the fear. They had kids who had allergies, et cetera. You talked about insurance coverage, but Iowa has a strict liability statute for domesticated animals, cats, dogs. I don't know if it applies to bees or not. I can't imagine considering it be domesticated, you go out and pet them at night or something, but is there strict liability? And if there isn't, as a city, can we create it?
John did not address that in the memo that I know that AJ and I got on that. I will certainly ask that specific question, and we can do a little more digging on that.
And the other thing that I'm concerned with is if a kid's out playing and gets stung by a bee, trying to prove that it was your neighbor's bee
Right.
is going to be tough.
It is.
Can we create some sort of an assumption that if you're stung within 100 feet or whatever is appropriate, 100 yards of a place that's keeping bees, it's assumed that it's your bee?
Yeah, good question.
Because that's the biggest concern I have is I think it's great to raise bees, but even if a kid's highly allergic and nobody knows it and he gets stung, I think he should be covered by the bee owner's insurance. And I think we need to make sure that that's going to happen.
Do some more digging on that front.
Well, even if the homeowner is not liable, Ron, I mean, the homeowner, it may not be the bee of the homeowner.
Well, that's what I want to know. Is the bee owner liable for a bee sting off of his property? And if under Iowa law, if under our statute he's not, I think he ought to be, because if you're going to keep bees in the city, most people get stung, it's not a big deal, but we got to be aware, some people get stung, it's a life-threatening injury. And I think we need to protect those people too.
I guess for me, it's
Yeah.
a non-attorney, it's a slippery slope so you have an allergy and it's near my property that causes that allergy, or just off my property. It's opening up for all allergies, not just bees.
It could be, but I think we draw it to limit it to bees. I mean, if you're going to raise bees in your backyard, which are known to sting people, and some people react very severely to it, I think we should provide for
But if
that.
you're allergic to flowers that I raise and you happen to walk by my flowers, is it my fault?
We'll put this in the bee ordinance, so that's something.
I know, it's a assigning liability where there isn't already liability under current law, just is
Yeah, but we don't want
concerning to me, so.
people to, at night, come over and cut down your flowers or come over and poison your bees. And, if there isn't protection, that's what ultimately is going to happen.
Okay.
I think, but.
Steve, would a way around this be, when I was reading through it, some sort of a notice to surrounding neighbors, within 200 feet or 500? I just think that in most cases, if I knew that the neighbor was keeping bees next door, and I had a son or daughter that, was susceptible, at least I know it. Did you read any of the ordinances that require some sort of a notice or even a registration process where I could come into City Hall and I could see, oh, my next door neighbor is raising bees?
Yeah.
I'm put on notice.
Yeah, there were a couple of them out there actually that did have that requirement. And I don't remember where they were now because I looked at a bunch of them. Could have been Indianola, but I don't remember. But there were at least one or two out there that I did see that one of the requirements, like what I've got in here to register with the state apiarist, was to let all of your neighbors who surround your property know. And that's certainly something we could require if you'd like to do that.
Well, that would be my thought, would be if you're required to register with the state apiary, you kind of do have that notice. I was thinking the same thing, David, but if you register with the state, then you really are making that public notice that, hey, this is where my bees, this is where bee habitats are.
Yeah, and I do like the state registry notice. I think that's a good idea. The only thing I would say is since this looks like it's being run by a private company in connection with the state, that we make, if they go out of business, it's some other So we don't have an ordinance that
Right.
requires you to register with somebody that's not
Yep,
around.
and we could put language in there to just say, or other affiliated, whatever with that state department, sure, yeah, we could cover that. Because that could change, to your point.
Yeah, successors in interest, I think, is language I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, one other question, and it really isn't with the bees. Part of this ordinance is the horses, livestock. And as I read B, section B, the private stables, they can be located on the rear half of the lot, but not closer than 20 feet from any property line. So is it, in theory, you could have a horse or two horses 20 feet away from a neighbor's fence?
Yep,
Does that seem close?
that's where.
That's our existing ordinance.
That's correct. That's our existing
Right.
ordinance. We're proposing to leave all that the same. And I think what helps to mitigate that a little bit is that you have to have at least an acre to be able to have a horse. And so I can think of about 3 properties in town where they do have horses, but they're way bigger than an acre and doesn't seem to be an issue. So, and again, that 20 foot, that's if they have stables and paddocks. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The ones that I'm thinking of, the structures that they have are closer to the middle of the lot, and there's a significant setback. So that has not seemed to be a problem since I have been here. And again, that's just a paragraph from our existing code that I'd propose that we just keep the same.
My question's on paragraph G. So it says, a building permit shall be obtained to construct any building or fence. But yet, building code doesn't require a building permit for any building. So if you build a 10 by 10 structure, this is saying you need a permit, whereas our existing code doesn't say you need it. So help me,
We could clarify
what
that.
wins?
Yep, well, really, I mean, if it's less than.
120 square feet.
Yep, 120 square feet, even if it's on a slab, you still need the permit. So if it's less than 120 square feet and it's movable, so it's not on a slab, then you don't need one. That's the only time that really applies.
Right.
We could certainly clarify that.
Okay, so just,
You
backyard
know,
shed stuff.
just say if it's,
Right.
The plastic buildings that you can buy at Home Depot and
Right.
that, I mean,
Yeah. I think most of these people, we should try to cover every situation, obviously. I think most of these folks that do this are probably going to go with the 6-foot tall shrubs or the fence.
Right.
To be able to get that flyaway done. But should they, hey, I also need a shed, so we'll do all this at the same time, we need to make sure that we cover that, so.
well, I just think of storing the supplies for beekeeping.
Yep.
If they happen to put a small
That's a good
deck
point.
box out there.
Okay, we can certainly clarify that too.
Yeah.
It's very simple, it's not complicated, and I'm always a fan of that, if it works.
Right.
I feel good that West Des Moines has had this in place for 5 years, and they've just had that one complaint. So, and again, this is a little bit more involved. I could see somebody going out and buying a couple of chickens and thinking there was nothing to it and trying to give it a go. Bees, I think, are a whole different thing, so I think that helps us here.
yeah.
And of course, if we have issues, we can certainly come back and strengthen it and add some additional requirements if we find we need to do it. But I'd propose going the simpler the better to at least start it out with.
I agree, Steve, and I think something that, again, have a reasonable ordinance, but also have it without so much burden on especially on staff to maintain as well, so. But certainly something that's reasonable and but requires certain minimum requirements to do it, so.
Anything else you can think of? Generally comfortable with that moving forward? We'll do a little bit more homework on the legal side of things, and I would certainly think that's something the state apiarist could speak to, is the legal questions. So I'll catch up with him and see what he's got to offer there.
Yeah, one last thing is, does West Pet, we have, the hive would be removed. So if we have to get to that point, do we have the capability to do that?
Yeah, good question. I was hoping West Des Moines might have an example or two, but they haven't. Boy, you would sure think that'd have to be a pretty extreme situation where somebody just doesn't have a desire to cooperate with us, but. Right.
Right.
And it could be if we ever get to that point, we'll have to discuss it with AJ and bring it to you if we need to. Hopefully, like with this case in West Des Moines, if they can identify that, hey, there's an issue here, and that property owner was willing to fix the issue and provide the water source, which stopped them from going to the neighbors and using their water, and it was fine. So wanted to have something in there just at least to threaten that, hey, we can make you remove them if you don't do it properly, and hopefully we'll never have to get there.
Yep. I think you could probably find some help from the state apiarist or somebody
Right.
that
Yep.
extreme condition happened, so.
Yep.
Is there any public input here?
Who's speaking?
Doyle Kinsey?
Okay. Mr. Kinsey, this is not a public hearing. This is a lunch and learn, but if you're here, if you want to, I'll give you, I'll express some latitude to give you a couple minutes if you want to express some thoughts.
Okay, yeah, I've corresponded with you and Mr. Russell and others about this for the last 3 or 4 years. I am a beekeeper, have been for 12 years. I was on the board of Iowa honey producers for 6 years as a District 4 director. I live here in Urbandale for 43 years. As far as I would like to see part of the thing, and then I was part of that worked with the West Des Moines Council and the Dallas Center, Mayor Kidd there, and getting theirs changed. I would like to see that anyone that's wanted to do this to be required to take a beginning beekeeping class. I've been teaching those for 10 years now. I just think it gives an individual an opportunity to know what all's involved in that before they jump into it, which could kind of eliminate some problems that have already been discussed here. I'd be willing to teach a free class to any citizen of Urbandale for that, if that would be something that would become a part of the ordinance. And I'd be willing to answer any questions. I was just speaking with our state apiarist. He did receive Mr. Franklin's email, I believe it was, and I think you were gone on vacation or going on vacation. But if you got a question or so, I'm not an expert, but I can definitely have a lot of experience and might be able to add just a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kinsey. Does the West Des Moines ordinance require a beginning class?
No, I have offered to I asked them to put that in there, but they declined to do that for whatever reason. I know there's some fellow beekeepers that didn't want that, but I think it's a good idea. It just gives people an idea of what they're getting into before they do it. It's a little more involved than getting a goldfish and putting it in a bowl.
I understand that, but are there? And I appreciate your offer to do that. My only question is: are there other classes available routinely?
Generally speaking, those are all basically done now. Especially with the COVID thing, we didn't have as many in-persons. Our state apiarist always has one up at DMAC every year. That usually most of them start latter part of January and run for 5 to 6 weeks. The one we've been keeping is with the Friendly Beekeepers of Iowa, the FBI. We do it out of Indianola. We've already did our class, but if it was somebody that was wanting to start this year, I'd be willing to do it free of charge if we could find a place to hold it and to get started this year if the ordinance and everything got passed in time.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your input. I'll throw that out to the council, see if they want to include that as part of the proposed ordinance.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That is one of the things I plan to discuss with Andrew Joseph, who's the state apiarist, is the whole education side of things. That's one of the things on my list to discuss with him. So I will bring that up when I catch up with him.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
I think it'd be a good idea to have it. My only concern is how available are they? If some guy decides I'm going to do it this summer and he finds out he has to wait a year for a class, well, he's just going to do it without it. So,
Right.
But if they're generally available, it makes it a better argument.
And maybe
Yes,
maybe
that
there's some way
was my thought. So.
Yeah, and I just thought maybe there's some way to include it in that language about best practices within the first year or something that you're
Right.
getting that kind of education or.
Yeah. Well, and one of my specific questions is going to be, once someone registers with you, as we're recommending that they do you have information then that you send out to them that would cover some of that information that would be in a class.
Yeah.
So there's probably several different ways to do that, but yeah, I will discuss that with him.
Okay. All right. Anything further on that topic? Hearing none, then we're going to move on to item 3.2, and let's discuss the senior center reopening plan. Thanks, Steve, for that. AJ?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As we're slowly, in some instances, or a little bit more rapidly moving back toward a normal level of providing service to our residents, one of the ongoing discussions I've had with Jan Herkey, our Director of Park and Recreation, is how we're looking at our recreation-based programs that we traditionally offer and how we might be able to reincorporate those into what we provide to our residents. Top of that list, for a lot of different reasons, was opportunities at the Senior Recreation Center. That is a group that, in our discussions, in a more generalist term, we identified as a group that probably, as you would implement certain requirements or restrictions for returning, would probably be one of the more compliant groups, given the age range that the participants are in. They're probably a group that received or had opportunities to receive the vaccine earlier than most other groups. And we also know that we have a very, very loyal following of participants at the Senior Recreation Center. So it was an easy one for us to think, well, this is a good one to start rolling out or to propose rolling out to see what kind of reaction we get. And so I provided a challenge to Jan and her staff to come up with a plan to look at how we may look to re-implement or reintroduce those services at that facility in the upcoming months. So with that as a backdrop, I'd like to turn it over to Jan and her staff for further explanation.
All right. Perfect. Jan, welcome.
All right, thank you. Carissa Williams, the Senior Recreation Center Supervisor, is here, as well as Molly Wilhite, the Recreation Superintendent, and they know how I like the microphone and they'd prefer not to have it, so I will start and defer to them as needed. So, Nicole, can you share the screen? Are you able to do that? Yeah, you should have. I gotta see if now I'm in my. See if I know how to do this. I don't know if I'm doing this right here. Steve, do you know how to do the screen share?
Yeah, it's not, it's weird. Yeah, where is the,
Unless we have to minimize this.
yeah, maybe.
Good, at least I'm not the only one that's struggling with it.
Where did we lost our mouse here. There we go.
Let's see here.
There you go.
We're gonna share.
There you go. There it is.
No,
It's up there.
I can't see it.
You probably have to pull back up. There we go.
Okay, I think we're on. So we put together a plan, and Chris has spent a lot of time on this, and Molly as well, in regards to the reopening plan. We had mentioned under the current phase, so we did go into phase 1. And before we get into that, we're just going to show some numbers of the some information prior to COVID of the in-person attendance. And as you see, 2019, 2020, we're down some, but that obviously is when we hit March and everything happened with COVID. This is the popularity of our fitness classes before COVID. Obviously, this is going to have to be something that changes because we're not going to be able to have that many people in a room. And again, some of the other activities where we have a lot of people sitting close to each other for activities. So what we're proposing is going to, as the reopening plan is going to be able to provide opportunities that doesn't have so close proximity. So just to show, again, in phase one that we opened first in, is it November, Carissa? And then we closed again, and then we went back to phase one. So phase one right now is digital programs. We also have pickup programs so they can come and pick up activities such as different projects, Mass for Seniors, puzzle checkouts, craft kits, Dress a Girl kits. And then we have ongoing, some of our most popular programs are the Zoom fitness classes, because some people just aren't comfortable going out or aren't able to yet, so they're able to do that. So as you can see, Carissa and her staff are doing some great things to be able to get over 9,500 participants since July for that digital and drive-in activities. And these are some of the activities that we had mentioned of in-home Zoom. So some of our instructors have been doing classes at home. A few have been comfortable to come into the senior center and videotape or do a Zoom class from inside our facility as well. So these are some of the Dress a Girl dresses and different craft projects that we've done. So again, getting back to the reopening plan, currently the reopening or the plan is a health clinic. So they do feet care, and I should be having you explaining this, but different minimal activities such as the foot clinic, foot care, blood pressure, blood sugar screening, and the people that come in do all the health screening, so take your temperature, make sure you don't have COVID and things like that. So also the SHIP is the Medicare counselor, so they provide that service via phone. So not in person. And then some of our other instructors, like we mentioned, there are some that come into the senior center to be videotaped, and then some that still do it from their home. So phase two is what we're proposing for this next phase. And Carissa, I would be happy to pass the baton to you if you want to share this a little bit in regards to what we are proposing to get people introduced to that. So does that microphone work?
I got it.
Okay.
So what we're looking at for phase two would be allowing access to our fitness equipment. We have a room with treadmills, new steps, ellipticals, those kind of things. So allowing with limited capacity people to make a reservation to come in and utilize that equipment. That would be kind of the first part of phase two, because we can limit the number of people and the amount of contact they'd have with others. And then a little bit later, moving into offering our group fitness classes, which is the #1 driver of our attendance normally. And what we know people are anxious to get back to as soon as it's safe to do so. So we are looking at offering indoor and outdoor, and that's based on both expecting participants to have different comfort levels, as well as our instructors having different interests and comfort coming back into the building too. For those, we would need to do it by registration in order to control the capacity of the room. It's, like you saw in the photo, we sometimes had upwards of 75 or 80 people in a class, and at this point, with maintaining social distancing, we would not be able to do that. So we'll get into that in a minute, talking about kind of restructuring our plan. And then also some outdoor recreation. We would propose starting that this summer, things like our bocce ball, or possibly pickleball, and some of those outdoor activities that people can do and maintain social distancing while they do that. So that's what we're looking at for phase two. I guess I left out lobby service too, allowing our patrons to come in and register for things at our desk versus over the phone and online like we have been for the last year.
And the pink forms that we handed out outline this proposal more in detail, but we just wanted to do an overview for you. And one of the proposed changes for the fitness model, and again, I don't know if you want me to explain it or if you want to go for it, Carissa,
yeah, I'll keep going, and you just let me know if you think of something I missed. So prior to this, and starting in July 2018, we had started a membership model where the seniors would pay an annual membership fee, and then they could come to as many classes as they wanted throughout the year and the week. And so it was a drop-in format, so attendance control was based mostly on how many parking spaces we had and what we were used to for attendance and planning that way. So knowing that we need to require social distancing, moving to a per-class registration model is what we're proposing, which would be in line with what we do in the rest of the rec department for other programs for youth and adults, and also what we do for a lot of our classes at the Senior Rec Center for art and education type classes, where they sign up and pay a registration fee, and then that covers a specific amount of time for that class. So it is a change in the model, but it would allow us to kind of control the capacities, and it would also allow for people not to be turned away by coming and expecting to come to a class and finding out that we had reached capacity. We do have many of our patrons have a small balance left on their fitness membership. We basically paused everyone's membership last March when we closed down, and just have told them that that would be restored from the date we reopened. So looking at how we would plan to do this, we would potentially just apply a credit back for the amount of their membership, which they could then use that to pay for classes, or we could issue a refund if someone desired that. And then we do propose to continue digital Zoom fitness classes, both for accommodating more people and also for the people that still are not comfortable coming to a group class.
And as outlined in the handout that we gave you there's different stages of each phase. And obviously, as we learned back in November, we could take one step forward and then take 2 steps back. So with the understanding, and for our patrons have the understanding as well, the need for flexibility and be able to pivot according to what happens with the vaccinations and what happens in regards to the numbers and so forth. Our main efforts, obviously, for the city has been and will continue to be in our efforts as well as for the safety of our patrons and err on the side of being conservative, especially with this clientele. But there are quite a few that are anxious to get back. And with most of our programs, and we'll touch a little bit on the rec programs as well, is each individual needs to know what they're comfortable with. We will provide as safe of environment as we can. And also with all of these proposals, as you see on the bottom of page 3 of your handout, that we're going to continue to enforce the protocol of signage throughout the facility in regards to masks will be required, social distancing. We're going to discourage lingering. I know that seniors miss being together and talking, but we will discourage that from happening in the facility. And of how diligent that Carissa is, she did touch base with the Iowa Department of Health. And if you want to mention that as well.
Yeah, it was the Polk County Health Department, and they reviewed our plan and basically said that everything looks like we're complying with what they would recommend as far as mask requirements and distancing and that sort of thing. And then just, again, being flexible that if there is a spike, that we'd be willing to pull back on the plan,
So I guess, quick question on that. Since this population is probably highly vaccinated, how does it change with people that are vaccinated versus general population?
Yeah, I think the guidance from the CDC, and anyone else, feel free to correct me, is that as long as you're in public, you should still be wearing a mask and still be social distancing. And so, while we'll probably have a high percentage of people that are vaccinated, there will probably be some people that are not. And so complying to those health things until that goes away will be important for us.
And the governor's proclamation still encourage or discourage seniors from congregating in large groups and so forth. So again, the seniors will have to know what they're comfortable with. One of this is a big change from, if you recall, 2 years ago when we changed to the fitness model. That was a change because they had to, the seniors then paid an annual fitness membership. So this will be another change, but I think it's a necessity. As we've learned with COVID, some are positive, some mightn't be looked at as not positive, but all of our operations are adjusting, and this is just one of them. And this will help as well in regards to not just the social distancing and so forth, but being able to keep better track of our patrons, and just consistent with every other program like Molly does. You register, you sign up, you know you're in, and if we start having lots of people on a waiting list, hopefully we'll be able to offer more classes. So we're looking forward to that, to get people back in the facility. So again, we'll touch a little bit on the recreation, but do you have any questions for Chris or Molly or I in regards to the senior reopening plan?
I just have a suggestion, which may or may not fly, but I would think that it would be helpful to have a class for vaccinated people only even if you keep them socially distanced, some people will be more comfortable if everyone's been vaccinated. And the other side of it is may encourage someone who's on the fence whether or not they're going to get vaccinated to go get vaccinated. So at least consider that.
What are your thoughts for right now in terms of capacity? How many people do you think you'll be able to have in a class?
I'm estimating probably around 15 right now, which gives more than 6 foot distance. It gives about 10 feet is how we have the room marked out right now. There's about 14 or 15 marks on the floor and they're all about 10 feet apart.
Look, it's a good start, and I'm sure, Jan, that people are wanting to get back. I'm sure you're hearing from some members that are probably vaccinated and are ready to get back out there and start doing some things again. Do you think some of the Zoom programming is something you'll keep doing into the future, even beyond the COVID? Is something you see value in?
Yeah, I think definitely for the time being, we have no interest in canceling it. We're getting really good response in all our fitness and educational classes. And I know there will be people that aren't comfortable for the time being. Long-term, I could see it being a piece of what we do, but it also has to be balanced with how much in-person demands we have too, so.
Absolutely. No, I think everybody will be happy to be back in person too, but I could even see during the winter, sometimes when people maybe don't want to go out and about, that could still be a good mechanism, but no. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're going to cover a little bit as long as we have you. And there are going to be some questions from, actually, we're getting emails of parents ready to get their kids in summer programs and when are the programs going to be promoted and offered and so forth. So just wanted to give you, if you get questions, or obviously for your information in regards to what we're planning for summer. And Molly, I don't know if you want me to give yeah, there you go. I got the microphone, you can't have it. So we are moving forward with summer recreation programs, and again, some of our, with the asterisk by the programs per se, of we are gonna be following the mask while required when you're indoor and when you're not able to social distance of 6 feet apart. Obviously for camps and things that are outside, we'll do everything in our capability to keep the social distance and so forth. But that will be a big thing. We're gonna have hand sanitizer stations at every location that we have, frequent hand washing when we're at camps and things. And what Molly and her staff have already been doing is individual packaged crafts, and if you have paints or crafts or snacks or whatever, they're individual, so each person can have their own, and limited field trips. And one of the things, obviously in summer camps, that's one of the most popular things, but many of the sites that we go to aren't open yet. So as they open, Molly, I think the big word will be flexibility and pivoting and all those buzzwords that you're hearing, but it's hard to schedule field trips for July when those facilities aren't open yet. So we'll be adjusting to that. And then similar to the senior program, we're going to be limiting class sizes. We might have had a summer camp for 50 kids, and we might reduce it to 25. So obviously some of those things, and as this past year has been incredibly hard on the budgets and revenue, pretty much non-existent and so forth. So we're realizing as we're phasing into this, we're not going to go 0 to 60 right away. We're going to try to be as safe as we can, and that obviously will impact the level of revenue that we bring in. But our goal is by the end of this summer, and hopefully with vaccinations and comfort levels of people, we'd love to be able to have a fall party in the park and have everybody back and celebrate some sense of normalcy. But right now for outdoor classes or outdoor programs, essentially, and we talked with AJ about what are our parameters, and essentially of any program that we can control the number. So a party in the park, you can't control the number. Molly is, and her crew are planning a drive-in movie. Again, you can control that because people have to pre-register, and is it already filled, or no, it's not advertised yet? We're not there yet. So it usually fills within the first couple hours. But so anything that we offer will require pre-registration. So Easter egg hunt is not happening this year because you can't control the numbers. And again, maybe by July, we'll be able to do that, or May, or whenever. So no drop-in activities. And then we will also, they've been offering a number of virtual programs and take-home programs. Like last year, the MAC program was Mac in a Box. So we went and delivered to the participants. This year, we're going to be able to provide some in person. Some of the challenges to that, again, is we can't get into all the schools or facilities that we have in the past. So the staff is being very versatile and trying to move forward as much as we can. But again, realizing if things change significantly, we'll be able to take a step back if we need to. So hopefully that won't happen, but they're moving forward, and I just commend all the staff for their creativity in the last year. Never in our careers did we think of, I mean, with everything of all of us in our personal life and business life, but we plan for the future. I mean, we're always planning 6 and 9 months ahead, and having to react instead of plan the last year has been extremely tough. So commend the staff for that. So be happy to answer any questions about the recreation program or anything within Parks and Rec.
All right, thanks, Jan. Any questions for Jan? I think it's well thought out, and trying to get back to business as usual again. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to item 3.3, is just the general COVID operational update. AJ?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I thought this would be, since Jan provided that very good overview of the recreation programs, it's obviously much more seasonal, and we're getting toward that point, but I thought it might be helpful just to provide some other updates that we have when it comes to issues associated with how we're providing services to our residents in association with COVID vaccinations and getting back out there, and all the good things that we've been waiting for over a year to happen, and they all seem to be going that way. Yesterday, I sent out a memo to all of our directors indicating that, given that we have a higher rate, or there seems to be a higher rate of vaccination, the positivity numbers have declined. Today, they've inched a little bit upward, but they are going, in general, the right direction. And I think that comes with the year-long education process. It also comes with more vaccination and people being much more careful. At the same time, we also know that we're in business to provide service to our residents. And so when we look across the board as to what we've been able to do reasonably uninterrupted, you can really tally that up and look at the services that are available that really, I would say, were disrupted least. Those are any outdoor activities that we could provide as far as maintenance, street, roadway, park maintenance. Obviously, police, fire, EMS were uninterrupted. Inspection services that Steve can allude to that we did virtually, not virtually, but at the time where we would send our inspectors out, or they made arrangements to come from home to go to the job site, not only in the community development, but in engineering to keep up with all the construction-based projects. So several of those things that we were able to accomplish. Our biggest casualties, if you were our direct programs where we had hands-on. Those fell underneath the guidelines from the Parks and Recreation Department and everything that they do from the Senior Recreation Center on down. And then also the library. And again, I will commend both of those operations for being adaptable and trying to continue to make those connections with the residents that they previously served or want to continue to serve into the future. So I thought, given all the restrictions we had, that we did an admirable job of still making a reasonable level of services available. Having said that, we've always tried to look a little bit forward and to try to prepare for that. And one of the things that we looked at, again, looking at the positivity rates and the parameters that were pre-established, and just a reminder that once the 14-day average got below 8% in Polk County, sustained for 7 days, the council decided that they would have meetings in person. But there would still be a restriction as far as the public being invited into the building. We've reached that threshold. And now the other threshold was below 5% to open the building back up to individuals coming to council meetings or any of the boards and commission meetings that we had. And so we're not there yet, but we're trying to plan for that. And still, certainly for public meetings, they will all still be held or be available virtually for those council members or board and commission members who are still not comfortable coming in person, or at least for people from the outside to be able to participate in those meetings. We've also, as you may recall, probably upwards to a month to 6 weeks ago, we allowed for our employees to schedule in-person meetings in the building if it was requested by the participant, or if the a staff member felt it was most important to have that individual or group of individuals in the building to have face-to-face discussion. We've had several of those. They've typically been held in the large conference rooms that we have, or in this chamber as well, because we can really assure social distancing. We do require masks, and then we do sanitize the area after the meeting is over. So we think we've been very cautious in that approach. But as we look forward, we've looked at April 5th as kind of a target date that we would begin to see more of that reopening taking place. And again, this is all predicated on the below 5% for 14-day average, 7 days sustainable, having this building open. And again, if that happens, then again, we suspect that it probably won't be this mad rush to come back into City Hall, but it will be probably a very tempered approach, and we would still require those protocols that I mentioned earlier. And then looking even further beyond that, we hope to begin to reestablish a level of normalcy that we haven't seen for a year. And again, we've always adapted the motto that we need to be flexible, we need to be adaptable, and adjust whatever we're doing to meet the needs of the residents that we serve. And again, I would commend the directors and their staff for making that very possible. I think we've, in probably just a few instances, have not been able to provide that level of service that we've had before, but I would say that those are probably our higher risk ventures, that we had large gatherings, that we had large interactions. And so again, as Jan outlined earlier, that we hope to see those come back incrementally as things do get better. So again, we were looking at the first part of April 5th potentially, as that is a time frame. We're kind of preparing ourselves for that, but we'll be flexible along those lines. I will notice that in today's, I think it was in the Des Moines Register, or at least a press release from the city of Des Moines, that Derek Zahn, our communication specialist, shared with everybody that the city of Des Moines is planning to have limited reopening on May 3rd. I think there's a Monday, or May 5th, pardon me, and that's a Monday. And they would invite at a limited basis people back into City Hall, and then June 1st to open those doors. So again, not everybody is following the same pathway, and certainly we're going to remain be flexible, but I did want to share kind of that outline that we have, that I'm preparing the staff for at least. And again, we're hoping that things are going in the right direction. But if anything that we've learned during this last 12 months is that the only thing that is predictable is the unpredictability of all of that we've been going through. And our main goal is to, in this building, or at least in the organization, is to create as safe environment for our employees as possible, but also that translates to the residents that we serve. So providing a service that unnecessarily puts people at risk is certainly nothing that we want to engage in. So we'll continue to monitor this. I'll certainly keep all of you posted as to what our plans are, but given those pre-established parameters, we're kind of working around those, and we'll see how that goes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, you've heard the reopening plan from the library director, from Jan today. Most other things that we have, Steve and I have talked about the inspection process beginning once again, and so we will slowly roll those out and look at those environments that are probably needing our attention the most, the ones that could be associated with life safety related issues, and that includes the fire marshal and his staff getting out there as well, because we have suspended those operations for quite a time. So again, we're hoping that we're going to start seeing more light at the end of the tunnel, and we're hoping it's not a train. So at this point in time, I'd be happy to answer any more questions or get any additional information and forward back it out to you. But this is kind of our plan right now, as loose as it may sound.
Okay, thanks, AJ. Any questions or comments? Okay, well.
And then one other thing I would like to raise, and I point, if you have any of those, any questions about the information I provided you earlier this morning about the one item on the proposal with the resident, we can talk about that. Or if not, you can just let me know how you feel about it. I know it came out late, so I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Has everybody else read? I'm sorry, AJ, I haven't seen it. I saw your email come in, but I haven't had a chance.
No, that's fine. We can connect later with everybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Unless people had questions, I haven't had a chance to see it yet.
That's fine.
and it's just a follow-up for is why is drainage issues now becoming an issue now when it wasn't in the original design plans as an issue? So something to follow up on later.
Yep, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've read your response. I think it's fine, except, I'm not in favor of moving the whole thing 2 foot. I think that there's a limit on what we can do here.
Yeah, that was an offer that we had made originally, so we can accommodate that, pardon me, from a design standpoint, just as a background.
But it's still within our right of way.
Yes, it is. No question about it.
Good. How are we doing with the pool, the demolition, and the decision to close? Anybody, are we moving forward with that?
Yes, we are.
The fuel tank is what's got me the most concerned. Getting that thing shut off and getting that leaking stopped.
Yes, we've since the council took action, I've reached out to the representatives of the school district, specifically Superintendent Bass. I'll let him know of the council's decision. This is spring break time, so he took advantage of that. And so we're meeting next week to outline a mutually agreeable schedule for proceeding with the demolition of the building. Our staff has gathered information or has or in the process of gathering information concerning demolition and all the components that are involved with it. It's just not bringing in a qualified contractor to knock the building down. As you can imagine, there's a lot of things to take into consideration for a 45-year-old building. Removal of the underground storage tank that we brought to your attention is just one of those, but also everything inside the building to comply with DNR, EPA, and all environmental related issues as far as demolition of a building. We'll also have to bring to the attention of the school district that their water source for irrigation of the baseball fields comes out of the building. So they'll have to relocate their water source to an appropriate location in the school property to accommodate their water needs for the baseball season. So that's something I'm sure they'll want to address, given the popularity of baseball in Urbandale and the nice field and the conditions that they have. They certainly, want to make sure that that's covered. So we'll be meeting next week with them to go over those and to establish a time frame that is acceptable to everyone. Certainly going to work our way around the school year, having an active demolition adjacent to a parking lot and to a high school certainly probably won't be the safest environment. So we'll work according to that.
Okay. All right. Well, anything further for the good of the order then? Not, then I'll ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
This is Poggi. I'll move to adjourn.
Or a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy the day.